I've never liked monopolies. I've always been against that. But the only monopoly that I liked was Google.
If you're a brand, if you're a company, if you're a thought leader in your space, for you to get featured on ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity when somebody's typing in best X and Y queries, just you need to get your name or your brand cited in as many places online. When
everything starts sounding the same, what can make a post or a mention or a video actually stand out to AI and to people?
So right now, there's a lot of first mover advantage. Folks, businesses that start doing this over the next couple of months, you're going to be ahead of the pack.
Welcome back to the Icons in Real Estate podcast. We're diving in today to one of the biggest shifts happening in real estate right now. How AI is completely changing how clients find, trust, and choose who they work with. We're actually joined by Rudi Davis, co-founder of KeyCrew Media, for a masterclass where we broke down the steps on understanding these new shifts, from SEO to AEO, from searching to answering. But that wasn't enough. That's why we're bringing him back to the podcast today, to dive even deeper in understanding what's unfolding for agents and find how can they stay visible, trusted, and ahead of this new age of AI. Rudi, welcome to the Icons of Real Estate podcast. From the masterclass to the podcast, you're surfing on all of our channels here. Really happy to have you. And, the masterclass turned out great, and it didn't touch everything that you can tell people, right? One of the things is a little bit more about you, right? About your story on how you got entangled with AI search engines and how you got entangled with real estate. Can you give us the pleasure of letting us know a little bit more about that and how did it segue into AI and real estate?
Yeah, of course. Well, firstly, Tomas, thanks for having me on the podcast. As you say, after the masterclass last week. In terms of a little bit about my background. So when it comes to, as you say, kind of AI search engine optimization. So I've been in the world of digital PR and SEO, so search engine optimization, coming up around a decade now. So I've worked in previous lives in PR agencies, SEO agencies, built a boutique SEO digital PR agency about 5-6 years ago. That was acquired by a PR software company that aggregated a lot of data when it came to journalists and publications across North America and Europe. I kind of led both the agency side of that business, building out services that we were providing to clients, which was a mix of digital PR and SEO, and also the SEO strategy of that platform, where we developed sort of hundreds of thousands of programmatic SEO pages. Basically, every journalist we had in our database, we created a web page for that journalist, and the same for every publication. But the idea is when somebody goes into Google and searches email address for journalist name, our page will be amongst one of the first pages that you find. And that's a super scalable strategy that you've got a big kind of database product like that. I exited that company coming up around 2 years ago. And since then, with a number of business partners, we've been building out KeyCrew, which is the latest venture. Within that time, there's been a couple of big shifts within just the sort of search industry as well. Obviously the big thing is the release of ChatGPT and other LLMs around kind of 2-3 years ago. And so we've sort of hit this kind of perfect storm within the industry where what would have been in the past, the default was going to Google search to find that product, that service, or that kind of answer, that query that you have. We're already seeing a lot of that traffic being now replaced by ChatGPT and other LLMs. So in terms of kind of KeyCrew and where that fits into all of this, the actual, there's a couple of strands to it. So firstly, it's an aggregator of real estate service providers. So we've aggregated tens of thousands of different service providers across the US, categorized by sort of zip code or city or suburb, the type of service that they provide, and then a number of sort of specialisms and filters that you can apply. So that's sort of one part of the product. And then the other part of KeyCrew that we're really growing out, and there's really sort of strong demand for at the moment, is it's basically a media network. So we've got all of these service providers in our database. We've got this large growing audience of real estate pros on the platform. So there's a large part of the site that we've been building out called the KeyCrew Journal, which is staffed by a growing a number of journalists, editors, previous professionals that have worked in the media world. And like there, and what we're doing with the KeyCrew Journal is we're publishing a lot of original thought leadership content every day. And we're sourcing the expertise of all of these pros, all of these thought leaders we've got in our database. It sort of gives us this sort of like first-hand analysis and commentary across the real estate industry. And so we're regularly publishing a lot of content on the KeyCrew Journal. That's now its own digital publisher and its own publication. And we've also launched 5 other digital publications, which are kind of sister sites of the KeyCrew Journal. And they're each focusing on sort of different verticals of sort of real estate or construction. So we've got some that are geographic focused, such as Florida. And we've got others that are more vertical specific, such as property technology or the luxury end of the residential property market. So we've got these sort of growing platforms where we're putting out a lot of real estate news coverage. We've got this big network of experts that want to share their opinion and get coverage. But we're sort of able to kind of tie that knot really nicely with this media network that we've been building with KeyCrew. Going back to what I was saying at the top of the question in terms of how this all fits into SEO and how that's kind of moving across to AEO, GEO, kind of whatever term you want to use for AI search engine optimization. What we're finding is that this gives us a really useful platform where we can regularly feature folks that we're working with, clients, feature providers, featured experts. And generally the game at the moment is if you're a brand, if you're a company, if you're a thought leader in your space, for you to get featured on ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity when somebody's typing in best in Y type queries, you need to get your name or your brand cited in as many places online, digital publication, reputable news outlets, syndicated across other areas. And because we've been building this media network, we've sort of got a lot of levers that we can help pull the clients to achieve those ends.
Yeah, and Rudy, I got to say that I've never liked monopolies. Okay, I've always been against that. But the only monopoly that I liked was Google, right? And I mean, it was literally like every single Google tool,
Mm-hmm.
Gmail, Google Drive, Google Groups, Google Meet. I don't like that too much. But, anything that Google touched, it was, super professional, super simple. And that was the only monopoly that I was kind of comfortable with working. And it's incredible on how in a short span of years, of course, it's been a few years. It's not a yesterday thing. It's not a last year thing. It's been a few years, but in a short span of moment, considering evolution, that monopoly was so much challenged, right? Into thinking not so as on how Google thinks, but how people react to it and then plan their business. One of the things is obviously right now, as SEO experts that you guys are, you always have to keep up with the Google algorithm, right? Considering now that and this is what the masterclass was about, where we'll talk a little bit about today, about like AI, engine optimization, where do we go to keep ourselves updated on that, right? We know that SEO, they have the Google updates every 3 months or something like that. How do you keep yourself updated on how the algorithm is moving when it comes to the AI universe?
Yeah, well, Tomas, really good question. I think, broad terms, you're absolutely right. Like dealing with a monopoly often does have its advantages because it's just that one thing you got to worry about and focus on. But I think what's happening now where search is becoming really fragmented across both Google and now all of these LLMs that have entered the market, it's like challenges, but also plenty of opportunities. And you're absolutely right that each product, each platform has its own release schedule, its own features, its own tools that you've got to keep track of, across the news, across specialist kind of search, marketing, trade media that are really good at reporting on all of that stuff. But I think the good news is that it's just those sort of sound principles and sound foundations sort of apply across everywhere. And it goes back to the same kind of sound principles when it came to SEO in the pre-AI days. So it's making sure that your on-site content is really up to scratch, really talks about what you do. There's a few differences now. In the past, it's sort of, people kind of somewhat wrote for the algorithm and wrote in ways that Google thought you should write in terms of kind of hitting certain keywords and phrases. That's changing where you've now got to write content that's much more natural language. And it's set up as sort of natural questions and answers type formatting. And there's more technical stuff when it comes to sort of how you're marking up the schema on those pages. So it's more easily ingested by LLMs. And then when it comes out kind of, in the old SEO days that we would call like off-page, the sort of link building, similar thing, but it's less about getting actual backlinks, which in the past you could kind of game a little bit, and there are lots of sort of blacked out ways to do that. Whereas now it's much more about just getting your name, your brand cited in as many sort of authoritative places as possible. The foundations and the principles are still there. I think just the execution has changed a little bit. And that's just something for people to work into their sort of everyday workflows if you're working in the field. I think the last point as well is sort of tracking and measurement. This is still really in flux. And I don't think there's a perfect product or solution that's hitting the market yet that can really give you like that perfect visibility across LLMs. And like there are now pretty good tools when it comes to SEO, keyword tracking, and just Google's own products such as Google Search Console. If you're a webmaster in SEO, you can get really good visibility of how your website looks when it comes to Google search. We don't really have great products at the moment for getting your visibility across all of the LLMs. I'm expecting in the next 6 to 12 months, the products are already in market will vastly improve. We'll get a lot of new products launching as well that's going to kind of help to square that circle.
Yeah, Rudi, that was actually my next question for you on, we know that there are tools to find out, keyword research, the rankings and all that. And we still don't know how do we can agents measure if AI is already picking up the content or not. I was joking with the ChatGPT, and I was just choosing different cities, and I was putting like, what is the number one agent in X city, Y city, Z city? And they were actually, they were giving me an answer. Right. And so even for any agent out there, you just go and do that prompt on ChatGPT, and then you see whatever they're doing. It means that they're put them in that place. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you've said that obviously the AI visibility, depends on, the backlinks and the citations and the mentions, the credibility signals, as you mentioned. It's how we get people to trust us and how we get, AI to trust us. For most agents, that does sound like a lot of PR level stuff, right? And of course, you're speaking within the face of a PR agency here. But if we were to say, even for any agent starting out, right? How can agents get those mentions and get a little bit of that AI trust without having to hire a PR firm or spend on big media? And sorry, Rui, I don't mean to take business away from you. Okay, this is more of a situation that if you show value, you might get business, right? So it's more on like for anyone that even wants to get at it, kind of today and tomorrow in the next few days, what they can do to get ahead.
Yeah, of course. I think like a really good use case, as you say, if it's maybe like a new agent, somebody that's trying to start building their business, you're not going to have huge budgets to begin with, and often it's best to just start this yourself. And then once you've got more cash flow coming in, you can kind of reinvest that more strategically. So I think, if I were a new agent that was a little bit strapped for cash and just wanted to bootstrap this to begin with, it's, start within those kind of the circles and the networks that you've got. What's that lowest hanging fruit that you can go after? So, think about the local town that you're in or the patches that you're serving. What are some of those kind of small local news outlets that report on your town? Start with those kind of super kind of low circulation but super specific publication. It might be like a weekly print paper, it might just be a digital paper, and they might just publish a couple of articles a day. I would reach out to the editors at those publications, introduce yourself, and just see if they're interested in receiving from you perhaps like a monthly or a once every 2 months like a non-promotional column, like an op-ed that's just giving like a market update that is going to be useful for buyers and sellers in the local area. And you can bring in some of your sort of first person perspective in terms of what you're seeing happening on the market at the moment, what you're hearing from buyers, what you're hearing from sellers. That can be a really good way just to get some initial coverage where it's, articles under your name with your byline getting published in some of these articles that are really local and specific to the place that you're doing business in. The next thing I would look at, what professional associations do you hold memberships with? It might be the state, like National Association of Realtors Association. There might be a local chamber of commerce. It might be other sort of professional accreditation and bodies you have in your state or your city. So if you have any relationships at those places, speak to the people that you know over there, see if they're interested in writing up any stories, publishing any stories that you could write up for them, see if there's any kind of profile sections on there, any Q&A sections, see if they do any call outs for experts for any kind of content that they're publishing on their sites. There's often those associations that they might have like a sort of sidearm that's like a quarterly trade journal or publication that they're putting out. So just work those connections you've already got to see if there's anything that you can do for them to get some coverage for yourself. Then beyond that, it sort of classes as like the next level up, where it's a little bit more cold pitching up and uncertain, but it can still be sort of worth the return of your time and effort. So there's a number of kind of platforms where journalists put out requests from experts for articles that they're writing. One of the most popular ones at the moment is called Quoted, with it's spelled Quoted, and it's free to set up an account if you're a source, and you'll often see real estate being sort of one of the topics that gets the most requests from journalists who might be local journalists, they might be sort of personal finance journalists, mortgage journalists, and often they're asking kind of just general questions about, like, is it a buyer's seller's market at the moment? Tips when it comes to, maximizing the value of the home when it's on the market, sort of stuff that your typical realtor would be really well placed to answer. And the trick is sort of monitoring that every couple of days and just replying to anything you see that is relevant to yourself. And then I would say that the last thing, which is, can be very high impact if you're able to secure this, is podcasts. Specifically, we're finding with LLMs get a lot of their context, so a lot of the stuff they're ingesting is coming from transcripts of videos on YouTube and other video platforms. But these days, most podcasts will have a channel on YouTube where they upload their podcast, and then YouTube is then automatically transcribing all of that audio. You can get on a number of podcasts, which then gets onto YouTube, which the LLMs then transcribe those, but ingest those transcripts. That can be a really effective way, again, of just getting the LLMs to ingest your name again and again and again to prove that you're a source and an expert on those topics. So when it comes to some podcasts that you might want to look at, most states, they're going to have maybe a dozen podcasts that are focusing on the real estate industry in that particular state. If you're in a large metro, there might be, say, half a dozen podcasts that are focusing on the real estate market in that particular metro. There might be more kind of general, just sort of like agent brokerage specific podcasts that you could pitch to as well. It would involve a bit of kind of cold emailing, pitching, picking up the phone to see if you can get hold of those folks. But if you can secure some spots on one or two of those outlets, and that can really help to move the needle as well.
That was a lot of things, Rudy. It's a lot of things that people can do for themselves, right? And either for any agent listening right now, like it is exactly as that. Like you write that down and you check mark it when it's done, right? And you don't check mark it until it's not done. So there's a lot of things that you can do. The main point is putting your name on the most channels and places possible, right? So both AI as Google and other search engines can perceive you as an authority, because obviously if your name is out there 50 times, 60 times, 100 times, they're going to start noticing you, right? And there is also like kind of a combination that you may see people that they're really invested on, for example, their Instagram, right? And Instagram is their only platform, right? And they have 10,000 followers, for example. But then you go out there, there's, nothing else more. I mean, they do good. They do have good business coming from Instagram, but nothing else. There's nothing else beyond that. No website, no mentions, no podcasts. I'm curious to understand how this AI visibility play around with the social media. If it actually goes and discover our posts, like the post that I did in 2017, that I hope that no one scrolls back that far. Like, does AI scroll back that far? Like, is social media involved at all in this kind of, let's pull it like in a visibility ball?
Yeah, I think short answer is it's kind of low impact when it comes to moving the needle on LLMs. I think, if you have an Instagram following of 10, 20,000, kind of be the similar to sort of traditional SEO when it comes to Google. It's long been thought that having a large social following, it's a small signal that can kind of show that you're an authority and you've got credibility, but it's going to be much less impactful than getting your name or your brand cited across sort of platforms where there's gatekeepers is the key thing. So digital publications, trade associations, podcasts, YouTube channels, places where you've got to pass a bar to kind of get onto those sites to begin with. Whereas social media doesn't really have that, and that's why traditionally when it comes to SEO, it's not been as highly valued as a trust signal.
That was a very accurate and sustained answer. Thank you. One thing that I'm wondering about is, of course, if we all do what it takes, right? If we all do what it takes, and we all follow kind of the dogmas of AI, of keeping content structured and educational. You talked a little bit about this at the masterclass. I'm wondering, like, when everything starts sounding the same, what can make a post or a mention or a video actually stand out to AI and to people?
I mean, it's a very good question. I think so. Right now, there's a lot of first mover advantage. Folks, businesses that start doing this over the next couple of months, you're going to be ahead of the pack. We're still pretty early on in the adoption curve in terms of businesses really getting to grips with LLM optimization. So you just got that as the first thing to bear in mind, is that if I start investing in this now, there's probably a fair amount of first mover advantage if I'm a realtor in any sort of moderately sized kind of town, city, metro across the country. In terms of once we kind of pass that tipping point and the LLMs become the default search engine or discovery engine, which a lot of people are predicting it's going to be in the next kind of 12 to 18 months. That's a good question. It could become like where Google search now, where you go on every blog and every blog kind of looks like it was just a rewrite of a blog on another website, and we kind of peak content as we got to on Google a while ago. So I think it comes back to the fundamentals. So making sure that like all of your content, there's a freshness to it. That you're not just sort of writing your base content, your FAQ content, your sort of market content, and then forgetting about it. I think it's going to become really important as everyone optimizes for LLMs, that you're regularly updating it. There's a lot of freshness to your content, and also like uniqueness of your content as well will become really important to stand out. So it may be things like on a monthly basis, you're putting out pretty detailed market summaries, market reports in your local area. Maybe you're tailoring some of those updates to some of those sort of like target customers or target segments that you've got. So perhaps it's first-time home buyers, perhaps it's downsizers, perhaps it's people relocating into the town, from a different state. And then when it comes to uniqueness, how can you write stuff that just hasn't been written elsewhere on the web? So maybe you get really specific and you write some kind of anecdotes about some of the folks that you're working with that really kind of brings to light and highlights the dynamics in the market at the moment. You have a deal that fell through at the 11th hour because of X, Y, Z. You hearing that a lot of people from out of state that are relocating are coming in for a certain reason and they're looking for a certain type of home. I think there's just like a lot of sort of just knowledge, insight, and expertise that your average realtor is going to have. We just need to think about ways that you can constantly communicate and broadcast that kind of expertise and unique insight that you've got.
Yeah, it's almost like a conundrum. Even like, in order for AI to notice you, maybe you have to be careful on how use AI because you have to stay unique to yourself, right? Of course, there's a way of staying unique still using AI, but I mean, you can tell when there's unique AI or unique, I just had an idea, a creative idea, right? And it's gonna come to people to realize that in order to get probably to be stand out with AI and have success with AI, you don't need to be a slave of AI, right? You don't need to use AI for everything. You can use your heart, your personality, your ideas, and just use AI as a tool, right?
Yeah, exactly. One of my kind of predictions is the sort of the impact of AI and content generation over the sort of short to medium term is exactly that. I think users are going to really respond well to stuff that's clearly written from somebody's unique kind of first person perspective. Does it just read like, something else that was spun from ChatGPT? So, for realtors, for agents, you're dealing with kind of unique personalities every day. You're juggling maybe often kind of complex deals or difficult customers. Like there's a lot that you can kind of surface and just write about and publish. And that's really going to get across your personality and like your unique perspective on the market. I think, folks that start doing that will really start to stand out when, as you say, a lot of content is just going to look quite similar as mass AI adoption kind of arrives in the next 12 to 18 months.
Nice. And to wrap things up, we do have some fire questions from the audience. I do want to mention the questions. I think some of them I would say slightly answered, maybe along the podcast and the masterclass. I'll still name them out. All right. So first one we have is from Samantha Lee from Toronto. Hey Samantha, Rudi, with all the big national sites out there and the big teams, how can small teams like ours actually get noticed by AI? Do we even stand a chance?
Oh, yes, Samantha, thanks for the question. Yeah, a lot to unpack, but I think just to answer it as sort of succinctly as I can, leverage those strengths and those advantages that you've got against the huge chains, the huge multinationals. So if you are just focused on your town, your metro, your patch, work on that, work on becoming the expert in your local area, using some of those techniques that we kind of discussed earlier on in the podcast. So getting regular market update feature heads, columns in the local press, reaching out to local podcasts, local YouTubers in your metro, in your city, and just becoming a personality and becoming a real expert in your local area is kind of the way to beat the mega chains. And that's where I think the agility and the sort of networks and the relationships that smaller independent brokers or agents really have over the mega chains can kind of help you to win that battle.
Thank you, Rudi. Let's go to the next one. Rachel Kim from Albany. When it comes to AI, does video content matter or is all about the written stuff?
Yeah, Rachel, really good question. Yes, it does. Yeah, so the LLMs, we know they use YouTube and YouTube video transcriptions as a huge source of a lot of data that they're scraping from the internet. So yeah, it's really important. So if you can get onto YouTube channels, if you can get onto podcasts that upload all of their episodes onto YouTube, so really, really useful way to get your name or your business or your brand scraped and ingested by the LLMs.
So short answer, Rachel, yes.
Yes.
Okay, last one, Megan Carter from Nashville. Rudi, for agents who don't have time to post every day, what's one type of content we should focus on if we want AI to notice us?
Yeah, Megan, again, really good question. So yeah, if you're really time strapped, again, I would focus on those external citations, those external mentions. So whatever for you is the kind of most effective, least time effort thing to do. So it might be getting onto some podcasts, getting some op-eds into local media, choose one and really focus on that.
Awesome, Rudi. And then if you're strapped up with time and you're busy closing deals and you can't do anything else, that's where agencies like Rudi's KeyCrew Media can help you alleviate any stress that you have in growing your business by making sure that is done while you sleep and while you close deals. Rudi, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Thank you so much on the masterclass. I'll give you the floor to kind of say a last few words for our audience if they want to get in touch with you and learn a little bit more about what you do?
Yeah, well, Thomas, thanks again for inviting me on. Yeah, it's been great chatting all things AEO optimization. Yeah, if anyone out there wants to learn more about KeyCrew and KeyCrew Media, the sort of work that we're doing with a lot of agents, brokers across the country at the moment, then the website is keycrew.co. You can explore the website. You can look at the KeyCrew Journal, our sister publications, and if agents do want that heavy lifting taken care of, we do have a number of packages at the moment where we're getting agents regular mentions across digital publications, across podcasts, across YouTube, all with that aim of getting them more visibility on LLMs. The website is keycrew.co.
Awesome. All right, guys, don't be secret agents, be visible. And thank you so much, Rudi. And I'll see you guys next week.